A boy happened to pick up a wooden stick and suddenly came up with a bold idea. He asked his older brother to throw stones at him as if they were playing baseball. Surprisingly, the boy used the wooden stick to hit a stone, sending it flying. However, they didn't expect the stone to land right on the windshield of a car. Faced with this unexpected incident, the older brother instinctively wanted to run away with his younger brother. But the younger boy insisted on taking responsibility, because their father always said they must take responsibility for their actions. So the two brothers courageously approached the car, and when the owner stepped out to inspect after hearing the noise, he discovered the windshield shattered by a stone. Instead of getting angry, the car owner was surprised by the boy's baseball skills, because the boy had hit a stone thrown from over 100 meters away with such a small stick. The boy told the car owner, "I'm sorry sir, I will work to pay for it." But the owner neither blamed nor demanded compensation from him. Instead, he was touched by the boy's honesty and bravery and wanted to see him hit again. Hearing this, the boy went back to his position, took the stick and hit the stone again. The car owner, watching him, couldn't help but be impressed by his talent. The boy's name was Greg, and he was born with a disability requiring leg braces, but that didn't affect his love for baseball. Every time he swung the bat and hit a stone far away, he imagined himself hitting a perfect home run. Upon returning home, Greg was excited, thinking he could finally get rid of the cumbersome braces. But his father told him he needed to switch to a new set because the doctor said his legs still needed support and weren't yet like other normal kids. Hearing this, Greg sadly ran to his room. Seeing his younger brother upset, the older brother ran to comfort him and gave him a set of baseball star cards that he had saved his pocket money to buy. Greg gazed at the baseball stars with admiration, dreaming of one day joining a big league and becoming an excellent player. However, his father had a completely different opinion. He knew that Greg's legs weren't suitable for playing baseball and could even cause him more harm. Therefore, he hoped Greg would give up his baseball dream and learn to become a pastor like him. "If you insist, you'll be mocked, rejected, and eventually get hurt, injured beyond recovery." In this struggling family, Greg's father is a pastor earning only $50 a month to support the whole family. Despite the financial difficulties, he diligently works at the church, striving to spread the word and guide believers on the right path. But Greg's father's work is not always smooth sailing. In a sermon at the church, he advised the congregants not to smoke or spit to maintain the church's sanctity. However, unexpectedly, some congregants opposed this sincere advice. They were unhappy with his teachings and expressed dissatisfaction. One day, when Greg's father was preparing to go to work as usual, he was stopped by others at the church. Coldly, they informed him that he had been dismissed and was no longer a pastor. This news hit him like a bolt out of the blue, leaving him stunned. He realized that this was not just losing a job, but also the family's sole source of income and the house they lived in, as it was provided for pastors. Faced with the unexpected upheaval, Greg's father didn't allow himself to wallow in sadness and despair for long. Knowing he was the family's pillar, he had to be strong to face all challenges. Thus, the family packed their belongings, carrying hope for a brighter future, and began their journey to seek a new life. However, it seemed that fate wasn't on their side. While on the road, their car unexpectedly ran out of fuel, stranding them. Everyone else on the car had fallen asleep except for the father, who stepped outside, looked up at the starry sky, and silently prayed for luck to smile upon them and help them overcome this difficulty. But in the next moment, the tire suddenly exploded with a loud bang. Seeing this, the father couldn't suppress his emotions and angrily kicked the car. The whole family immediately came out to inquire about the situation. Upon learning that the car couldn't continue, the father became even more despondent and hopeless. The family comforted him. The father muttered, "It surely can't get any worse than this, right?" But right after that, the sky thundered loudly. Looking at each other, they all burst into laughter. The laughter contained humor and self-mockery about the hardships of life. Then a downpour suddenly came, and they hurried back into the car to avoid the rain, hoping someone would pass by and help them. Not long after, a car did approach. The driver asked if they needed help. The father and the entire family immediately got into the car of that kind person. They were taken to the kind person's home. After hearing about their predicament, he felt empathy and understanding, even offering to help Greg's father find a new pastor position. However, the living conditions might not be very good. Hearing that, the father agreed immediately, as in their current situation, they couldn't ask for much more. Thanks to the kind person's help, Greg's family found a new place to live, and the father could continue his pastoral work at the church. Here, they started a new life. After the winter break, Greg and his brother went out to play near home and happened to see a group of kids practicing baseball. Passion ignited within Greg's heart. He wanted to join them and showcase his batting talent. However, a tall boy noticed Greg's leg braces and doubted his ability to hit the ball, refusing Greg's request to join them. Undeterred, Greg challenged the tall boy. "If I hit your pitch, we'll play together, okay?" The tall boy didn't believe Greg could hit his pitch, as his throws were fast and difficult even for ordinary kids to catch, so he confidently accepted Greg's challenge. Greg picked up the baseball bat, focusing intently on the ball in the tall boy's hand. He took a deep breath, adjusted his stance, and prepared for the challenge. The tall boy threw with all his might, the ball hurtling towards Greg like an arrow. On the first try, Greg missed the ball and even slipped and fell. Everyone laughed at Greg, and his brother quickly ran over to help him up, advising him to walk away. But Greg, refusing to give up, insisted on trying again. He hit his leg with the bat to encourage himself, then positioned himself for the next pitch from the tall boy. Seeing this, the tall boy decided not to hold back and threw with all his strength. This time, Greg accurately predicted the ball's trajectory, swung the bat powerfully, and hit the ball with a resounding crack. The ball flew far, and his brother cheered joyfully for Greg. But the tall boy declared he wouldn't play with Greg anymore, accusing Greg of cheating. Hearing this, Greg angrily yelled at him, calling him a liar and a promise breaker. Greg's brother also defended his younger brother's courage and perseverance. However, the tall boy stubbornly refused to let Greg join, and Greg and his brother had to leave sadly. When they got home, the whole family had gathered for dinner, smiling brightly. The father, newly returned, didn't understand the joy until Greg suddenly stood up and revealed he had removed his leg braces. It turned out that the day's challenge had shown Greg that even without the braces he could stand and walk normally. The father, overjoyed, suggested the whole family go out for ice cream to celebrate the surprise. Not long after, Greg unexpectedly received an invitation to join a baseball training class led by a coach who was the same man whose car windshield Greg had accidentally cracked with the flying stone. Recognizing Greg and impressed by his earlier display, the coach did say, however, that he needed a parent's signature to confirm the family's consent and support for enrollment. This put Greg in a difficult position. That evening, he took the form home and showed it to his father. Seeing something was off with Greg, his father asked, and finally learned that Greg wanted to join baseball training. Upon hearing this, his father immediately objected, fearing Greg's health couldn't withstand the rigors of training. But this didn't stop Greg from sneaking to the baseball field. Friends saw Greg standing outside and not joining, so they asked why and learned that his father refused to sign the consent form. Then Greg's brother, believing Greg needed this opportunity, forged their father's signature on the form. Soon after, the coach came to Greg's house. When the mother opened the door, she realized Greg had joined the baseball training. The coach praised Greg's talent and hoped that his father would support his son's dream. Hearing the commotion, Greg's father came out and declared that they did not support Greg playing baseball and the signature on the form was not his. The coach felt a bit disappointed, but he still praised Greg's baseball talent, saying, "I can only think that God has given your son a gift." Yet without his father's support, the coach had to leave. After the coach left, the father called Greg to talk. Greg said he loved playing baseball and his dream was to become a professional baseball player, but his father still didn't agree. Then he called Greg's brother outside because forging a signature was indeed a dishonest act. The father took off his belt, prepared to discipline the brother, but the brother insisted that Greg had a talent for baseball and that it was his dream. Hearing his son's words, the father thought for a long while before deciding not to scold the brother, but told him to return inside. The next day, Greg went to find his father alone. He told his father that baseball was his dream and that he would study to be a pastor while training in baseball. He was determined to pursue both paths. Greg then drew a diagram of player positions on the field for his father. His father looked at the drawing for a long time, and finally Greg's wish was granted. Now Greg had become a high school student. On the field, he put all his strength into a single swing, sending the ball flying far. With his high school team name gaining recognition, Greg continuously defeated opponents, becoming a star particularly noticed by the coach. Greg's brother and sister always stood in support of him, allowing him to feel the strength and warmth from his family. Moreover, his childhood friend also came to cheer Greg on. Seeing her again after so many years made Greg feel incredibly happy. Despite having great talent and skills in baseball, Greg lacked opportunities to showcase himself to the outside world. The coach contacted a scout, informing Greg that the scout would come to watch the school team's game the next day. Greg knew this was a precious opportunity, and he had to give his all to display his best side. The next day at the baseball game, the scout and the coach sat in the stands ready to watch. Greg's opponent was the tall boy from years before, making Greg both nervous and excited. He entered the game intending to wash away his previous humiliation. The opponent threw with all his might, and on the first pitch Greg missed, but on the second he gathered his strength and sent the ball flying far. Everyone watching stood up to cheer Greg on. His outstanding performance earned him enthusiastic support from the audience. However, as Greg tried to catch a ball, he ran full speed to grab it but unfortunately stumbled over a sprinkler, falling. Although Greg caught the ball instead of cheers, the field was filled with worried gazes as his fall had broken his leg. Greg was immediately taken to the hospital with his parents. After examining him, the doctor reported that Greg's leg injury was severe, requiring surgery and several months of recovery. The surgery cost was $7,000, a huge amount for Greg's already struggling family. Additionally, a more worrying revelation from the doctor was that Greg's body, having consumed too much protein, was now as frail as a 60-year-old. Faced with such financial pressure, Greg's family did not give up hope. His father shared Greg's story at the church, calling for help from the congregation. Greg and his brother used their free time to fix cars for money, while Greg's girlfriend also dedicated herself to helping at a store to raise funds. Their difficult circumstances attracted community attention. Many baseball fans sent money to support Greg, showing support for his baseball career. However, despite everyone's efforts, there was still a large portion of the surgery cost left unpaid. While Greg's family struggled to gather enough money for the surgery, the coach suddenly ran in excitedly with a newspaper. He was thrilled to announce that the newspaper's front page had important news. In a few months, a major league would hold tryouts right in their area. This was Greg's best chance to enter the major league. The coach enthusiastically declared that he was willing to lend part of the surgery cost to Greg, which Greg could repay once he was financially capable. However, Greg's father politely refused, understanding the risks and having his own fears. He was afraid that Greg's body would be injured again, that his baseball dream would not succeed, and the family would incur a large debt. "He's my son, not yours. I understand him better than you." In these circumstances, Greg's grandmother made a decisive move. She asked the coach to write a loan agreement including Greg's girlfriend's name, ensuring the surgery costs were covered. Greg's girlfriend agreed without hesitation. After the surgery, Greg was eager to return to the field, but the doctor's words were like a cold shower. "Greg won't be able to attend the major league tryouts in a few months. His injury was worse than we expected. We can still hope for a full recovery, but it takes time. 7 weeks until tryouts. He won't make it. I'm sorry." This news deeply disappointed Greg, but he did not give up. Returning home, Greg realized that his father's care for him was more profound than he had thought, even to the point of holding books about leg injuries in his sleep. This realization made Greg feel warmer than ever. Despite his leg not being fully healed, Greg consistently went to the field for practice, a perseverance driven not only by his dream but also by his family's support. While Greg was standing on a street corner watching a baseball game, his brother came with bad news. His beloved grandmother was in critical condition. When he arrived home, Greg sat by her bed holding her warm but aged hands. Her eyes still radiated immense love for her grandson. In a weak voice, she advised Greg, "Never give up on your baseball dream and make sure to attend the major league tryouts because I will be watching you from heaven." Her final words brought Greg to full realization. He understood he could not neglect his chances. With determination to join the tryouts, Greg made a drastic decision. He broke off his cast and removed the bandages. His father stood by watching but not stopping him, and his mother called him back inside because they knew Greg needed to pursue his dream on his own. Greg began intensive training with his brother's help. His brother patiently stood by, assisting Greg in baseball practices. Just before the major league tryouts, Greg went to church to pray, hoping to receive strength and luck from above. His father witnessed this scene but did not disturb him, returning home to write encouraging words on Greg's glove. The next day, the major league tryouts commenced. Greg entered the field with his father's blessing, his grandmother's expectations, and his steadfast belief and confidence. In the fierce competition at the tryouts, 200 of the most promising rookies gathered on a field full of dreams and challenges. Everyone knew only a few could prevail, so they all did their best to showcase their talents. The selection process was indeed tough. The judges' eyes, like spotlights, shone directly on the candidates, scrutinizing even the smallest movements and details. The guys on the field kept hitting and catching balls, while the judges watched closely, as if watching an action movie. Time passed and balls flew all over the sky. Contestants finished their performances, leaving the field with varied expressions. Meanwhile, Greg stood with mixed emotions, worried yet hopeful. Soon his name was called. A judge with a cold demeanor announced, "We don't want to waste time. You hit well but can't run. Maybe they'll still give you a contract." Hearing this, Greg felt a cold wave wash over him, but he wasn't one to give up easily. Believing he still had a chance, Greg insisted that he hadn't finished showing his second part. Seeing the judge unmoved, Greg quickly declared, "Every time I can hit a home run right to the moon. If I can't, I'll go home." His bold statement caught the judges' interest and they decided to give Greg another chance. Greg stepped into the batting area with determination as if on a mission to save the world. Each of Greg's hits was powerful and precise, astonishing everyone present. Every swing was a home run with the balls flying so far they landed near an old coach on the adjacent field. The old coach initially thought someone nearby was playing tricks on him, but after several balls landed he began to realize something was amiss. Eventually he called someone to check out who was pulling this stunt next door. Greg was invited to meet the old coach. Upon meeting, Greg enthusiastically listed his strengths in batting. However, the old coach noticed Greg's injured leg, thinking perhaps this boy wasn't quite suited for the field. Yet he offered Greg another chance. Tomorrow there's an exhibition match, you'll face the best pitcher. After that I'll decide if you're worth keeping. Don't worry, I won't embarrass you. I promised you this chance, but if you can't prove yourself, perhaps it's time to consider a different dream. Upon returning home, Greg received numerous calls from reporters as if he had just won the lottery. The next day the exhibition match was packed with spectators, not a single seat was empty. Before the exhibition officially began, Greg had to face the best pitcher. Greg stepped onto the field, bat in hand, bursting with determination to show the world his caliber. The old coach on the other side was no amateur either. He immediately called up a pitcher, though every pitch was quickly destroyed by Greg's unrelenting swings. Seeing this, the old coach stepped up the game, bringing in another player while he himself stood right behind the pitcher hoping to pressure Greg, yet Greg managed to easily tackle each pitch. Now Greg had consecutively hit 10 balls in a row. The coach then decided to raise the bar, calling in a seasoned veteran of the major league. The veteran on his first pitch sent the ball like a rocket, catching Greg off guard. The second pitch even made Greg stumble on the field, clearly in pain from the hard impact. The old coach rushed over to check on Greg, but the determined look in Greg's eyes made him realize this boy wasn't ordinary. Greg slowly got up, chose not to leave, and continued the game. He drew a standing position diagram with his bat, signaling his unwavering determination. The next pitch Greg hit perfectly. The audience erupted, standing up to cheer for Greg. Greg's father had also arrived at the field, witnessing that wonderful moment. In the end, Greg successfully joined the major league, proving that with faith and persistence, nothing is insurmountable. Today's film ends here. If you enjoyed it, please give our team a like and subscribe to the channel. Goodbye.